Arun, both of us have seen the evolution of Kubernetes, in the last 6, 7 years. So currently, the Kubernetes world is split into two. One is the conformant API based distributions like RK2 and upstream Kubernetes, then Tanzu, OpenShift, and so on. That has that has settled down and established, and customers have some kind of a checklist and guidance to go buy a specific distribution, a commercial one, or use open source. But on the public cloud side, and interestingly, you have been a part of this at AWS when ECS was launched and Fargate was launched. So there is a lot of fragmentation of these proprietary services like the App Runner on AWS or ECS, Fargate, Azure Container Apps, Google Cloud Run. And all of them are based on containers, but they don't adhere to Kubernetes. They are not exposing the Kubernetes API, and that is actually a little bit concerning to the developer sitting outside because the world is getting split into two: API conformant Kubernetes distributions, and then this proprietary black box, opaque managed services that are highly fragmented. What's your view on this?
Yeah, no, I think I don't see the world that it is split into two. End of the day, to me, it really boils down to what does the customer need. Kubernetes has a steep learning curve. So you may think that, oh, because I'm staying open source, because I'm staying conformant, because I'm using, an API that is driven through a community process, I'm going to be happy. Not at all. Kubernetes has a steep learning curve. As a developer, if you are a Java developer, if you have been building, say, Java application, now you need to understand what is the CNI plugin I'm going to use. That just blows your mind sometimes. Now you need to understand what is the CSI plugin I'm going to use to make my application most effective. All of a sudden, an application developer has to start understanding the deep networking fundamental. You need to start thinking about how I'm going to create these Helm charts, how I'm going to create, how I'm going to scale this application. I need to understand those elements. And that makes it very confusing, actually. And I think that's where these, I wouldn't call them proprietary closed source services, really work very well. Because oftentimes, at least when I was at Amazon, customers would come to us. They would say, I'm hearing everything around Kubernetes. It's exciting, but here is my problem. And so we would always approach the customer with what is their problem, as opposed to here is the solution. Let's figure out how do we wrap your problem in this. So I think the key element here is what is the problem customer has, and if customer doesn't need all that, API maintenance, they don't need portability. They're totally belonging to AWS or Microsoft or Google, whatever cloud they're using. I think it's perfectly fine to use their services because end of the day it's about what is the value that you're providing to customer, at what cost are you providing, what is the convenience are you providing. And the thing that I've seen, for example, ECS was actually launched far before Kubernetes was a thing. So in that sense, ECS has always existed, right? I mean, I'm more familiar on the Amazon side. So ECS has always existed. And in that sense, as customers were coming to Amazon, ECS was a really easy start for them. Kubernetes, after now 6, 7, 8 years, is a bit more stable. There are still challenges, but the steep learning curve and all those things. But you know, customers when come to Amazon, it's very clear. What are you trying to solve? Do you need deeper, super elaborate integration with the AWS services, or do you really care about open source? They may say that, hey, I'm coming in, our corporate strategy is AWS, but we also want to be open source compliant. In which case, then Kubernetes is a natural choice. But then they may say, hey, our corporate strategy is AWS. We don't care about which service we pick, but what really matters to is quick way to get the application up and running, and in how many zones, how many regions the service is going to be available, how much it can scale, which customers are running, what skill set do I have internally, what can I hire, where can professional services be available. So I think it's never as they say, Nora, right? No one right answer. So in that sense, it's always a nuanced conversation with each and every customer. And I think that's the most beautiful part of it.
Extending on that, again, something related to the cloud native ecosystem, there is a lot of excitement around WASM. So again, as someone who has seen this evolution transformation. What's your view on Wasm? For me, it is like there is AMD 64, ARM 64, and there is Wasm. But how do you look at that?
Yeah, no, I think Wasm is definitely over the last year or so has gained a lot of traction, and it does provide a portable mechanism where you can create that entire stack and you can run it whether on the edge, whether in it on the VM, it doesn't matter. So I think the excitement is definitely building up. CNCF is actually planning a WASM Con. So there's a first WASM conference happening essentially, but I think it's still in early days, on what it needs to be and where it will prove itself successful. There are a lot of language bindings. If you're writing your application in Go, for example, and then you can say, you know what, okay, create my now WASM assembly out of this so that you can deploy this anywhere. So I would say it's still in early days. Um, I'm not saying it needs to prove, but how does it run at scale? Day one is always easy with any technology. What does the day two look like? What happens when the application breaks? What happens? What are my debugging capabilities into it? How do I trace my application? How does it mix up with my existing containerized applications? How does it mix with my existing workloads? How does it integrate with my existing services? So I think a lot of that is still to evolve, but definitely an exciting space and must watch for me.
Absolutely. Every time I play with Wasm, it gives me sort of deja vu. It's almost like going back to the early days of LXC, trying to figure out how do I talk to a stateful service, how do I interoperate, all of that. So, absolutely.